What's up guys, it's Avery here. In case you missed it, I just increased my rental income by $23,000. And that mainly came from tenant turnover. And what that means is I got new tenants in because the other ones are leaving, so I had to take photos, list the apartment for rent on various platforms, screen tenants so I could get quality renters in. And a lot of people were asking me to do this video, so I'm creating a whole video series that will take you from before taking photos to that new tenant that is going to be moving in. If this is your first time to the channel, or if you're returning and you haven't hit subscribe yet, please go ahead and do so and tap that notification bell so you don't miss out on any tips for investing in real estate and things that you can do with your money in order to build your wealth. All right, so let's get straight into it because there's so many things that I'm gonna need to talk about. This is gonna take 2 videos for me to cover absolutely everything. And the first thing that you would need to think about before doing absolutely anything would be if you need to do any sort of renovation or fix up that apartment whatsoever before those tenants actually move in. Before you take photos of the apartment and list it, the first thing that you need to think about is if you need to do any renovations for that apartment. That would be the most important thing because the quality of unit that you put up for rent is going to be the quality of tenant that you're going to get. If you don't have a very nice unit, you're not going to have the best tenants, and it's pretty much just as simple as that. The question that you're going to need to ask yourself is, do I need to do a renovation? Is the quality of that unit good enough to get the quality renters that I want so that I'm going to have less issues? Do I need to fix anything? Is there any major maintenance do I want to do? Do I just want to do some big upgrades like paint, fix a bathroom, do a kitchen so I can increase the rent a lot? These are all things that you need to ask yourself before you're actually taking photos. And you can do some math, how much that it would cost to do some of the things like paint and fixing up the kitchen, and how much you could increase the rent, and if it even makes sense for that area. So if you're putting in a beautiful, beautiful kitchen with a marble slab and beautiful stainless steel appliances, but it may only increase the rent by a couple $100s, whereas it's gonna cost you a lot of money to do that stuff, or if you just did a quick little paint job, which one is going to be better for you? If you just did that quick little paint job, maybe you can increase the rent 50 to 100 bucks. So it kind of makes sense in your area. But if you're in one of those more expensive luxury areas and you do that first type of renovation, you're gonna get top dollar. So make sure that similarly to if you're renovating your own home for increase in value, that you don't over renovate to the type of tenants that you can attract in the specific area that you're listing your apartment for rent. So essentially, if you're going to be renovating your apartment, make sure you don't over renovate and do it above what the top of the market wants. Just get to what that top would be and do exactly that. But if you are going to be doing some type of renovations, don't cheap out on materials. Don't put in a crappy faucet that's gonna save you $30 to $50 just because it's saving you $30 to $50 now, because you're just gonna have to replace that a year or two later. I made those mistakes on my first rental and I'm still paying for it by fixing some things that I bought used or some things that I bought that were low quality that I'm now just putting in those higher quality things that I should have done in the first place. And if you're not gonna be doing any sort of major renovation, or if there's no maintenance issues that need to be taken care of, the minimum thing that you need to do is clean the apartment. Moving is very stressful, and if your tenants are moving into a dirty apartment that have insects, bugs, cockroaches, and a bunch of crap that's left over from the previous tenant, they're not gonna like you very much. You're already off to a bad start. So the absolute bare minimum that you need to do, if you're not gonna be cleaning it yourself, is pay for a cleaner to make that place a nice space for those people to move in, especially when they're on moving day. Because as we know, moving is extremely stressful. So moving into a nice clean place that you can call your own is the least that you can help that tenant out with. So now that we figured out whether or not you need to do a renovation or just a cleaning, it would be whether or not you're going to do this yourself or use a real estate agent. On my first unit, I used a real estate agent, a broker who showed the apartment for me, did all of the screening and all of the like. And that made a lot of sense in my area because typically that cost is put back onto the tenants and there would be a broker fee that would be equal to 1 month of rent. So I didn't have to pay for it. I was new to the game and I felt a lot more comfortable with that, as well as all of the tenants in the area were used to paying those fees. Now, I typically don't like it when people have to pay those fees, but because I was a little bit nervous about doing it myself, I wanted to do that. So now I feel more experienced and I am able to do this stuff myself. I offer the apartment with no broker fee and I do a lot of the work myself so I can get more tenants in, more quality tenants, and give them a good deal without having to pay those really big broker fees. Okay, and now that you figured out that you're gonna do it yourself, the first thing that is extremely important would be photos. The amount of really crappy listings that I see, not just in the rental space, but if people are selling their home, is insane. Do not have pets, kids, or random objects flying or running through the photos. Do not have an iPhone photo that is 1 foot from the object that you're taking a photo of. No one cares how a corner looks like, if it's the new paint. They want to see the whole room. It doesn't matter how close up it is or the thing you're trying to feature. Do not hide anything in your photos. It's really important when you're taking your photos that you're showing absolutely everything. If someone comes and finds that thing that you're trying to hide, they're not going to be interested. You're wasting their time, you're wasting your own time. Take good quality photos of the whole area so people know what to expect. If anything, your photos should be even worse than it might be when someone shows up, because if they're willing to come based on the photos that you've seen, they're more likely to apply. So don't make it better than it is, make it the same or even a little bit worse. Another thing that's important with photos is don't use a crappy camera. Some iPhone cameras or Android cameras are very high quality, but maybe don't get the entirety of the room. I personally have a nice wide angle lens so I can show the whole area. And sometimes you do get those people who say, that room looked a lot bigger on Zillow. And I'll say, yep, that's the wide angle lens, but I wanted you to be able to see everything. So you're not going to be hiding everything, and you're going to be taking quality photos. If you have grainy photos, people are just going to want to keep looking through the photos so that they can actually see it, or they're just going to skip over to another apartment. Maybe you have an absolutely gorgeous apartment that you've just completely renovated, but if you take crappy photos, no one will really know what it looks like, and they're not going to want to waste their time. If the house next door has nice photos and was recently renovated and is the same price, they're just going to go look at that one. It's also good to have a couple of angles and make it seem like you're walking through the apartment. From the entrance, through the main stairway, through each bedroom, and kind of have it in an order that would make sense, so when they're walking in, they would say, okay, yeah, I remember that from the photos. It's also important that you have good natural lighting when you're taking the photos. If you can take them on a day that's sunny, that's even better, but if you can't, it's not really a big deal. For me, I use a lot of the camera and lighting equipment that I have with these YouTube videos, so that's a great thing to add to my photos. Because I have these lights, it sometimes helps when it's not super naturally light outside. I've had people come and take photos that are professional photographers that just turn on all the lights in the area, take photos, and then just make everything super orange in their post-editing, so it kind of ruins the photo and it doesn't actually look like how it looks in person. And in post, you're probably going to want to do some editing after you take those photos to maybe even brighten it up a little bit more or make the space look even more inviting. Again, don't make it look better than it is, but make it look how it is, and you still want to get quality people in, and they still want to be excited by your photos. This is by far the most important step that you're going to have. Do not cheap out on camera equipment or paying for a photographer or any editing equipment, which is you can use something like Adobe Illustrator to brighten up those photos. So now that you have the photos, you're gonna need to figure out your actual listing, the platform, what you're gonna write, and how much you're gonna charge for rent. And if you're interested in learning about figuring out how much you should charge for rent, check out the video up here or in the description below, and I talk a lot about figuring out what the best price to charge for rent is. And my philosophy is create a nice unit and list it at or slightly below market rent, drum up a lot of demand, and get really high quality tenants in. If you list your apartment for rent too high, you're either one, gonna not get anybody who's interested, or two, you're only gonna get a couple of applicants to choose from. If you put it at a good price and make sure that it's a good deal and people actually wanna move in, you're gonna get a ton of people interested, and you can increase the rent year over year and have those people stay in because you had such good quality renters to choose from. The next thing that would be important would be your listing and what you're actually writing in that listing. So now first you've taken these photos, so you wanna put them in a good order that makes sense, all the way from the attention grabber photos. Like if you have a really nice kitchen, you wanna put that first so people click into that apartment and wanna check it out. And then maybe the other things like amenities like parking and the laundry at the end, so people know that those actually exist when you write them in your description. But you don't need to write an entire essay with this listing description. It's important to talk first what the price actually is. So put the date that people can move in, put the price of the apartment, as well as any move-in costs. So for me, it would be first month's rent and a security deposit. Some people might have first month's, last month's security deposit and broker fee, which would be the absolute max. But make sure people know that up front so that they're not asking you as many questions. Next, you're gonna wanna list the amenities. Does it have granite countertops, stainless steel appliances? Even though people can see this in the photos, they wanna read about it. Maybe the photo isn't absolutely perfect and they can't tell if it's a laminate marble countertop or a real marble countertop. So going to your description allows them to figure it out. The next thing that you're going to want to talk about would be any sort of major public transit routes or highway routes that allow people to get into the city or where they may be commuting from. The next thing that you want to talk about would be amenities. Are there any nice restaurants or cool breweries or interesting areas that people might want to go to, like parks or movie theaters or whatever it is that people are interested in, that you can put in your listing that will entice more people to come out to look at your apartment. The next thing that you'd want to think about when you're writing that listing is any fair housing laws. So you can't say, I'm looking for a family. But you can say there's an elementary school steps from the apartment, which might attract more families. So make sure you pay attention to those fair housing laws and that you're not breaking any. So really with that listing, you want to give as much info as possible, but in a succinct manner. And this also helps you with people asking you less questions about the apartment. You do want people asking you questions about the apartment, but you don't need to go repeating everything that's already in the description, even though you already do, because no one reads anything these days. The next thing that you want to think about would be where you're going to put your apartment for rent on what platform. Because it's no longer old school, we don't have to put ads in the newspaper or flyers on telephone poles, but there are a lot of great places that you can list your apartment for rent so people can search for apartments from the comfort of their own home. Places like this would be Zillow, Realtor.com, Apartments, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and a ton of other places. And a lot of these places, when you put it on their site, syndicate it to a bunch of other sites. So it's good to figure out which site would be the best one to pick so you can have the most eyes on your unit. So Zillow is a great place where people look for apartments a lot as well as homes, and I think less apartments and more houses. But Zillow has not a great feature in that if you have more than one unit, you have to pay $9.99 per week that you list that second unit for rent. And that can be a lot of money if it takes a long time for you to put your apartment out and actually get tenants in. So it does syndicate it to other places like Realtor.com and HotPads that get more people to view it, but you do have to pay for this service. It is not free after you have more than one unit. Another place that is popular is Craigslist. I personally stay away from Craigslist. 1, because it's not free. 2, the website layout is pretty horrible. And 3, you might get a lot of weird people. Craigslist is not always the best place for finding people to buy things or sell services. There's a lot of weird things that can happen on that site, but if you want to use it, it's definitely a viable option. Another place that you could list that would put it out to other real estate agents in the area who are going to be representing people who want to find apartments would be on the MLS. Now you could only do this if you had your broker license and had access to the MLS, or you're using a broker. But when someone puts something on the MLS, it'll automatically syndicate to basically every single site that I'm talking about. So the last 2 that I'm going to talk about are the 2 that I use. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones, but these are just the ones that I'm going to focus on because those are the major outlets. And I like using apartments.com for my listing. Apartments.com is great. And no, I'm not sponsored. I actually just like using them. But it's a great platform because it's free. You can put the amount of units that you want without having to pay any extra. And you can also do applications on apartments.com. And once you've accepted that applicant, they can just stay on apartments.com and doing expenses and payments through there. So it's a really great platform, and it's a one that a lot of people will view. Apartments.com, I believe, has the most traffic out of any of these sites, so it makes the most sense to put your apartment on that site if it's going to get the most views. And the other one that I like a lot, and the one that I've actually had the best traction on, would be Facebook Marketplace. Yes, Facebook Marketplace. It might sound as sketchy as a place like Craigslist, but I feel like you can get a really good understanding. And when someone reaches out to you on Facebook Marketplace, you can click on their Facebook profile and get a good understanding and already do some pre-screening when they ask you about the apartment. So it's a really great place that has drummed up a lot of interest for both of my units. And it's actually where I found both of my tenants that I got for the apartment that I'm currently sitting in, as well as the one upstairs. So you can see there's already so much important information to think about before you even have tenants contacting you or before you even activate that listing. The photos are extremely important. Please do not cheap out on photos, and make sure that you know that the product that you're putting out is going to be the quality of tenants that you get. It might be worth it for you to put in a little bit of money so that you can get better renters, as well as increase the value of your home. All very positive things for you that may outweigh the loss of having a month of vacancy. And there's so many more things that I need to talk about, so that's why I'm breaking this video up into part 1 and part 2. And I'll talk a lot about the remainder of the process, which a majority of it will be screening tenants in the second part of this video. I hope this video helps you guys get a good understanding of what you should do before you even screen tenants, and that you stay tuned for the next video in the series. These videos don't typically get a lot of views because they're not like the popular uploads, but I like to make these videos because they actually create value for those loyal subscribers that I have. So if you could share this with your friends, comment, like, and subscribe if you haven't, I would really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching, and hope to see you guys next time.